Looks like CU Boulder is the latest victim of hoax threats to colleges across America. It's happening now. We look at where legislators are coming up with the money to close Colorado's budget gap. They're about a third done. King Soopers is now posting armed guards demanding to see your receipt. Do you have to show it to them? Cameras don't all treat people equally. They were made that way, and some Coloradans are trying to change that. And families building a financial future from government assistance to investments and self-sufficiency.
Today is like a milestone for me.
That's tonight on Next. There's been a wave of hoax threats at colleges across the country, and what appears to be the latest one is playing out at CU Boulder right now. Students were told to stay inside while police swarmed the library on campus. CU's now calling it a possible swatting incident. The warning to stay indoors has now been lifted everywhere at CU except for Norland Library itself. The report initially came in as shots fired at the library. Police quickly said that they couldn't find a shooter and they couldn't find a single person injured. There have been hoax alerts like this at least 5 campuses across the country over the past few days. The special session to close the $750 million budget gap that our state currently sees is close to about a third of the way accomplished. The Democrats, who are largely in charge at the Capitol, have been changing various corporate tax policies to bring in more revenue. So in other words, businesses will fund about 1/3 of the gap. Politics guy Marshall Zellner shows us how.
Because God knows our budget needs all the help it can get.
When Colorado started July, its budget, like this piggy bank, was fat and happy. Today, after tax policy changes from a Republican Congress in Washington, D.C., the budget is short $750 million.
At what point are we going to require the departments of this state to tighten their belts?
What gets cut depends on the amount of revenue state lawmakers decide to generate in this special session. 5 bills will add money to the state's general fund by changing state tax policy. Here's a breakdown. 2 business deductions that will be allowed on federal tax returns will have to be added back on state tax returns. Combined, the 2 will create an additional $73.5 million in state tax revenue. Another $44 million will come in when insurance companies lose a tax rate deduction that was meant to encourage local job growth. The big dollar amount is selling tax credits, having insurance companies and corporations prepay taxes today to get a financial benefit in the future. That will bring in $100 million, but will ultimately cost Colorado over the next 10 years $125 million. And finally, the state will bring in another $26 million by no longer allowing businesses to keep a portion of state sales tax dollars for collecting the state sales tax. In total, that's $243.9 million, about a third of the $750 million the state is now short for the current budget year. The rest will come from the piggy bank and cuts dictated by the governor, perhaps even later this week. The special session also passed a bill that tweaks a ballot issue you'll vote on in November. That ballot issue is for healthy school meals for all, but you'll be able to make it for more than just schools on this ballot issue. We've reported extensively on this topic that the tax on families earning more than $300,000 has not generated enough revenue to cover free meals for all K-12 students. So the question to voters is, should we increase the income tax on those same people? And now the ballot issue, Kyle will ask if there's extra money, because there's not enough money now, but if there's extra money, we're going to use it to fund food assistance that the federal government cut.
I presume that Governor Polis has a note in his iPhone where he writes down things that he could cut, just when it occurs to him, like in the middle of the night. Oh, I could cut that, and then he puts it in there. When does he have to show everybody the note and actually make the cuts?
I was told last week by State Senator Jeff Bridges of the Joint Budget Committee, there's a meeting that's supposed to happen Thursday after all these cuts are known and you have the math all mathed out. Here's what needs to be cut to get us to the math.
In comes the gov with the iPhone note, and he reads off the...
So he has to also set those 3 alarms, like wake up, wake up.
Yeah.
Thursday, got to go to in front of the JBC.
These phones run our lives. Marshall, thank you. If the Polis administration wants to keep turning wolves loose in Colorado, as they have been doing, they'll need to come up with new funding to do it, because today a bipartisan group of legislators took away the state's funding to bring in new wolves. That more than $250,000 will instead be used for an affordable health care fund. You'll remember voters in largely urban areas narrowly decided that it would be a good idea to stick wolves into rural areas back in 2022. Ranchers have been furious about this since. The legislators who defunded the program today wanted to go a step farther and to actually block new wolf releases. That got shelved in favor of just reallocating the funding. Most of Denver city employees are working to shorten schedule this week. Friday is the first of several mandatory furlough days. The city is using that as a cost-cutting measure to deal with its budget deficit. About 9,000 city employees will have furlough days over the next few months. Workers with the lowest salaries will take 2 days. The highest earners will have to take 7 furlough days. Most public safety employees, like police, fire, will not be included in the furloughs. Some of the most obvious impacts that citizens will see will be to the city's waste collection. There will not be compost pickup this week. It'll be back next week on a one-day delay due to the Labor Day holiday. King Soopers has a relatively new policy at some of its grocery stores in the Denver area. Security guards wearing weapons on their belts, checking customers' receipts as they leave the grocery store. Because nothing says, "Thank you for shopping," like, "Hey, stop, prove you're not a thief." The store told our consumer investigator Steve Steger the policy is a response to a rise in retail crime, but they would not answer several other questions like how they pick which stores require receipt checks or if guards are allowed to carry guns. They also wouldn't say whether customers are required to show their receipts. So Steger, being a curious cat, went through the receipt check, refused to show his receipt, and he was allowed to leave without getting manhandled. Technically, nothing in Colorado law says you have to show your receipt if asked at the door. King Super shopper named Pilar Chapa told us she also chose to refuse when a guard asked her for her receipt.
I bought $21 worth of groceries. To have a police officer who looks like he could bench press 400 pounds ask me for proof of purchase again. I mean, he saw me pull the receipt out of the machine. It's just an intimidation tactic.
The law does give stores something known as shopkeeper's privilege, meaning that they can detain people for shoplifting without facing any liability for that. But they have to have probable cause, like setting off an alarm or having a clearly visible sheet cake stuffed under your shirt. Attorneys tell us that simply not showing your receipt to the armed guard at the door is not enough cause for you to be detained. Hey, whatever you're doing, look at me for a second, all right? We are making eye contact through a camera that accurately reflects the color of my hair, my skin, my eyes. Cameras were once calibrated with white people as the default, and that's bled into the consumer cameras that any of us can buy. An image quality lab in Boulder is hoping to address that issue. Our Janelle Finch has the story.
Being seen feels good. At Imatest in Boulder, imaging scientists are developing tools to recognize everyone.
I'm going to take the pictures.
The image quality company is studying racial bias in consumer cameras, like webcams and cell phones.
I think it's worth doing, and it's worth doing right.
Meg Borick
Yes.
is leading the research.
Part of our role here is creating test targets for camera makers. By having a standardized test target that allows them to test their camera properties and settings across a wide range of skin tones.
Borick says accurately representing skin tones isn't a new problem.
This is something that dates all the way back to film photography, where film has always been calibrated for lighter skin tones, and it's just something that's kind of perpetuated into digital photography as well.
But today, measuring is more inclusive.
We are bringing in people from across the Monk skin tone scale. That's a scale that was developed by a Harvard professor, Ellis Monk. And it's basically meant to be a better representation of the actual range of human skin tones.
And those things came together, and I finally designed the scale.
Dr. Ellis Monk says his scale isn't just about what's on the surface.
If we don't take skin tone seriously from a measurement point of view, then that means we're not going to understand the inequalities linked to skin tone, and it means that technologies that are developed where skin tone is important, they're not going to work equally well across the different skin tones.
Everyone deserves to feel and be seen.
All right, I'm going to take pictures.
And technology could get to a place where that may be possible.
Dr. Monk's scale has already been implemented by Google into the Pixel camera phone. He hopes to expand his scale into more phones as well as the healthcare space to address bias there. Now, Kyle, I know you're wondering, where do you fall on the scale, right?
For once, I'm not the whitest thing up there.
You're actually not. According to the expert, you are in the B category.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And then for reference, that would put me over here in the F category. Now, as you can see, there's only 10 up here. And Dr. Monk says that that's really just so you don't overwhelm the person who is looking at the scale, because eventually that scale will go to the computers, the machine learners, and the AI users. So you want to start with something that makes sense and that can be comprehensible
Yep.
and also understood by, again, that human to give to the robots so they can do all this work.
A jumping off point. Really interesting stuff. Janelle Finch, thank you. The nonprofit Denver Kids, Inc. pairs students with expert advisors, one-on-one help, and volunteer mentors to help those students graduate. They had a $50,000 budget gap. They had it because your latest Word of Thanks microgiving campaign covered it, and then some. You raised more than $55,000 to support Denver Kids' work as they focus on getting first-generation college students over that hurdle of high school graduation. With one $5 donation after another, you have raised $15 million for Colorado's nonprofits. As long as you're willing to give, as long as I'm able to organize these campaigns, we will stay after this week after week. Send me your ideas of nonprofits making an impact in your corner of Colorado. Email next@9news.com or text next at 303-871-1491. Rain is great news for firefighters on the western slope. One of the largest fires in state history is now largely under control.
It's a difference when you have people in your corner that's backing you up.
The path to economic self-sufficiency is long and winding, but families in Denver's public housing are not going it alone. That's next. Some Pueblo City Council members want the mayor out of her job. I mean, it's not personal. Well, it actually is kind of personal, but they also want to get rid of the mayor's office altogether. Mayor Heather Graham does not love that idea. Tonight, City Council votes on whether to ask voters if they want to go back to a council manager form of government. That would eliminate the mayor's office and replace it with a city manager who answers to City Council, not the voters. Council member Roger Gomez is behind this. He is a vocal critic of the mayor. He says she's unqualified. He wants council to have the hiring and firing power over a city manager instead. Critics on council worry this will just create instability.
It's crucial we'll be able to follow the charge and will of the electorate that will authorize the city council to terminate the appointed city manager if and should it become warranted.
I literally can't imagine having a city manager turn over every 6 months, every year. That I think would be detrimental to the continuity of the city, to the city's growth.
Mayor vetoed a previous attempt to put this on the ballot. She says that Pueblo ditched the old council manager system back in 2017 because City Council was such a hot mess express. If council overrides her veto tonight, this goes before voters in November. Wildfire burning in Eagle County keeps growing slowly. It's now at 5,300 acres. Lightning started the Derby fire more than a week ago north of Dot Cero. Some rain yesterday helped to slow it down, still no containment. Hundreds of people living in Sweetwater Valley and Sheep Creek are able to go home for now. Firefighters have made tremendous progress against the big Lee fire in Rio Blanco County. Fifth largest fire in state history, is largely contained at this point, but it's just kind of creeping up the all-time leaderboard. Chris Vanderveen explains.
For years, it was the standard when it comes to monster fires in Colorado. 137,700 acres, 2002's Hayman Fire southwest of Denver. Today, it's still good enough to be the fourth largest fire in recorded Colorado history, 215 square miles. Interestingly, that's basically the size of the Lee fire still burning on the state's western slope. In fact, as of last count, Lee's 137,758 acres is just 2 acres smaller than the Hayman fire. Basically, the two things are twins, at least in terms of size. 2 acres. Think of 1.5 football fields. That's it. That's the difference in size between the two. The good news is that Lee remains 90% contained, and thanks to recent rounds of rain, it's really not budging. So it remains to be seen, will Lee burn just a few more acres to get into the top 4, or will Hayman keep that distinction? For those who live near Lee, it's a distinction without real significance, though. It's already burned plenty. For Next, Chris Vanderveen, 9 News.
Along with many of us fire managers excited about this cooler weather pattern with a chance for rain every day over the course of the next 4 days. Coming off record high temperatures, severe drought, and kind of a August heat wave. To see temperatures in the 60s and 70s for multiple days and to have that chance for rain is nothing but great news. The bad news, slow-moving storms over burn scar areas create the risk of flash flooding. We have multiple flash flood warnings out for that exact reason, especially in El Paso County around Monument, Rama, Colorado Springs, and down toward Hayworth. We're also kind of watching as these storms are bringing more rain over saturated soils. So the good news is we're seeing rain, and it will come over multiple days, but we have to watch the burn scars for the flash flooding risk and the mudslide potential. Southwestern Colorado really needs some moisture, and we've got not only moisture but a flood watch there out through Tuesday, along with the flood watch from Colorado Springs down to the New Mexico line. Showers will move slowly from the northwest to the southeast tonight, clear out, and then we're going to do this all over again tomorrow. Temperatures stay in the 60s for the next few hours and will stay below average in the 70s Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. A warming and drying trend kicks in just in time for the Labor Day holiday weekend. We'll look for temperatures back in the 80s on Monday.
Some families in Denver's public housing have spent years saving for their future, and today that hard work literally paid off. That's next. With the rising cost of housing, food, healthcare, it is difficult for families who fall behind to catch up or eventually get ahead. Enter a unique program in Denver designed to help families achieve economic stability. Our Byron Reed has that.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Graduation is a milestone.
Today is like a journey, my next step.
For Naomi Mills, as part of her journey that's worth the wait.
I knew it was possible, I just didn't know when. You know, it's kind of like I knew there was an end, but I didn't know when it was going to happen.
Mills is graduating from a program designed to encourage economic self-sufficiency through employment. The 5-year program is funded by the Denver Housing Authority.
Because I knew I wanted to do something in the end. I didn't know if it was to buy a home, buy a car, use it for my own business.
So let's start with our first one.
She's one of 5 graduates receiving certificates for completing the program. They'll also receive a check from money they've been saving, matched by a contribution from the Denver Housing Authority.
I think the lowest I've seen is around $5,000. The highest I've seen is around $56,000.
Annie Hancock is the executive director of Friends of DHA, a nonprofit that works with the Denver Housing Authority to offer services supporting low-income families.
With Denver right now and really cities across the country, it's becoming increasingly difficult to find housing that is sustainable and people can afford.
Both groups host the annual Economic Empowerment Summit that focuses on workforce development, financial education, and home ownership.
So being able to provide supportive services while individuals and families are living in housing are critical in helping families navigate through that and work towards self-sufficiency.
For Naomi and her classmates, the graduation gives them an opportunity.
This is my next step.
To build self-confidence and make a turning point in their lives.
This is something that you could be grateful for. This is something you worked for. So, enjoy it.
For next.
You are our FSS class of 2025.
I'm Byron Reed.
Ma'am, may I see your receipts? You're good to go. Back with your feedback next. Bill shops at the King Soopers in Edgewater, where the guards check receipts. He says, I called to complain about the one who had a demeanor for a gunfight. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I find this behavior very intimidating. But Marilyn says, I see nothing wrong with King Soopers having guards look at receipts. Marilyn says, Walmart greeters did this for years. Granted, their hair was usually blue and they were unarmed, but hey, I love you people. See you next time.